All right, today we're going to go where a lot of homeowners are afraid to, right under the house. We're talking about mold in the crawl space. And let me tell you, it's way more than just some ugly stuff growing on the floor joists. It's a huge red flag for a much bigger problem.
You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? That damp, kind of earthy smell that just hangs in the air, and you can't figure out where it's coming from. You've checked the laundry room, the basement, everywhere, but nope, it's still there. Well, there's a really good chance the culprit isn't even in your main living space.
That's right, it's coming up from the crawl space. See, the air in your house is directly connected to whatever's going on down there. So if that space has a problem, you're going to smell it, you're going to breathe it. So let's get into it.
Okay, so that musty odor, it's not just annoying. It's a warning sign. It's basically your home's way of screaming for help, telling you that something is seriously wrong with its foundation.
Yep, when you smell that, what you're really smelling is mold. But here's the thing. While the mold is the immediate problem, it's not the root cause. It's just the symptom, the thing you can see, of an environment that's totally out of whack. Just getting rid of the mold, that's barely half the battle.
So, if mold is just the symptom, what's the actual disease? Well, it all comes down to one single word: moisture. Excess, constant, lingering moisture is the #1 ingredient that mold needs to absolutely thrive.
And the crazy thing is, moisture can attack your crawl space from all sides. I mean, it literally seeps up from the bare earth, it gets sucked in with humid summer air, it can flow in if your yard doesn't drain right, and of course, you could have a simple plumbing leak. Your crawl space is basically under a constant assault from water.
Now, this is super important, so pay attention to this distinction. We have to separate water problems from moisture problems. They are not the same thing. A water problem is active. We're talking about visible puddles, seepage, a dripping pipe. A moisture problem is what's left behind, that sticky, high humidity and the condensation that forms on everything.
And this brings us to an absolutely critical point. You cannot solve a moisture problem if you still have a water problem. It's impossible. You have to stop the active water from getting in first. Then, and only then, can you start to deal with all that lingering humidity in the air.
Okay, so let's get into the science of why that humidity is so destructive. You know, we all talk about relative humidity, right? But honestly, there's a much more important number you need to understand, and that is the dew point. To put it really simply, the dew point is the magic temperature where the air just can't hold any more water vapor, it becomes totally saturated, and it has to drop that moisture as a liquid. And we have a name for that process: condensation.
And this is the perfect example. Have you ever gone into a crawl space in the summer and seen a cold water pipe or an AC duct that's sweating? It's not leaking. What's happening is the surface of that pipe is just colder than the air's dew point temperature, so the air is forced to dump its moisture right there on the pipe. So here's the main takeaway. Forget just tracking humidity. If you really want to predict when and where condensation, and therefore mold, is going to happen, you need to be watching the dew point. It tells you the exact temperature at which surfaces in your crawl space are going to start getting wet.
So, why does any of this matter? Because what happens in the crawl space does not stay in the crawl space. Not even close. It comes right upstairs and directly impacts the health and the structure of your entire home.
This is all because of something called the stack effect. Just think of your house like a big chimney. Warm air rises, right? So air is constantly being pulled up from the lowest point, your crawl space, and circulated all through your living room, your kitchen, your bedrooms. You are literally breathing the air that was just in your crawl space.
Then think about it. If that air is loaded with mold spores, your indoor air quality just tanks. But it gets worse. That persistent moisture leads to wood rot, which weakens the actual structure of your home. It can warp your beautiful hardwood floors from underneath, rust out your pipes, and it turns your insulation into a damp, useless sponge. The stakes here are incredibly high.
Okay, we've laid out the problem, we've found the real culprit, and we definitely understand the risks. So now, let's talk about how to actually fix this the right way for the long term.
This is it. This is the question every single homeowner eventually asks. How do I solve this nightmare once and for all? And this might be the most important thing to understand. Simply hiring someone to come in and remove the mold, that's called remediation, is not a solution. It's a band-aid, a temporary fix. Because if you don't change the damp conditions that allowed the mold to grow in the first place, it is absolutely 100% going to come back. The real goal has to be permanent moisture control.
A true, lasting solution is really built on 4 pillars. First, you have to manage that vapor coming from the ground, usually with a thick plastic barrier. Second, you need smart ventilation, and that's key. You only want to bring in outside air when it's actually drier than the inside air. Third, you've got to circulate the air to make sure there are no damp, dead spots. And finally, in really humid climates, a powerful dehumidifier is the final piece of that puzzle.
And honestly, the best approach is to catch this stuff early. You should be looking for these warning signs before you ever see a speck of mold. That musty smell we talked about, surfaces that feel kind of cool or damp, seeing rust on your pipes, or even just noticing that your hardwood floors are starting to cup or warp a little. Those are all clues that your crawl space needs help.
So, at the end of the day, you have to remember that your home is a single, connected system. From the shingles on the roof all the way down to the dirt in the crawl space, it all works together. A problem in one area will always affect another. So the real question isn't just about mold, it's about the fundamental health of your home's foundation. Is it setting you up for a healthy home, or is it silently creating problems from the ground up?